Yeah.
That one should have gone. Maybe do that side.
Yeah, that's it.
Decides to come back to life by the time I turn.
You on Californian time?
That should be yours.
That is mine.
Good morning, everyone. There is no fire alarm drill anticipated today, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it's safe to return. Toilets are available in the stairwell of the building at each floor landing, and water is available from the water cooler in reception. And finally, please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. Good morning and welcome to this planning committee on Tuesday, 25th of March 2025. I am the chair, Councillor Ollie Davey. To my right is the vice chair, Councillor Matt Hall. Supporting officers present today are Wendy Ormsby, Development Manager, Damien Hunter, Planning Solicitor, and Wendy Harris, Democratic Services Officer. The presenting officers for today's applications will be Wendy Ormsby and Jill Himsworth. The meeting today is being streamed live to the Council's YouTube account, so can I remind all members and all officers contributing to the meeting to use a microphone or your comments will not be heard. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members with declarations of interest.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Davey.
I am present and I have no interests to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Hall, Vice Chair.
Present and nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Excuse me, present, and I am an ex-of councillor for the Litland ward, which is item 13. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Present, Wendy, and nothing to declare that I'm aware of.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present, thank you, and nothing to declare that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Brown.
Present, nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Brown.
Present, nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Present and nothing to declare that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Present, nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Faithful.
Present, item, whatever it is, Opry Old Boys School. I know the occupants and the neighbour alongside their town council or ex-town councillors.
Are they a close associate of yours, or do you just know them in passing?
Well, only on the basis of being town councillors.
I mean, basically, you know, do you go out to parties with these people? Do you, you know, go out to each other's homes? If not, then there's nothing really to declare.
No. I think from the opposite direction, I've actually been banned from the Old Boys School by one of the councillors who's occupying the building. So it's sort of, it's the opposite way around. It's not friendly, it's very much the opposite.
Right, if that's the case, then there could be some issue, because obviously if it doesn't just have to be a positive, I'm friends with that person, it could be a negative that, you know, I'm not friends, and you could vote in a way that, you know, would be against what they would wish. So on that basis, do you feel that you have something that you need to declare?
Well, I've just declared it and that's it. I mean, I'm not influencing my judgment on the planning application.
Sorry, I think we just need to get to the bottom of this. So basically what you're saying is that the person who occupies the building, is it, sorry, who you know?
It's the group who occupied the building. the Ottery Larder, and I have been told, I mean, I'm not particularly bothered about going in there anyway, but I have been banned from going in the building for whatever reason. It's a load of rubbish, but I think it's politically motivated rather than anything else, but that is what's happened.
Okay,
It's
so,
only one of, it's always said the directors, but it's only one director who's ever said it, and the other directors have denied it, so there you go. It's a personal thing against one particular person, but it's nothing about the building itself.
so I mean, basically, I think you may well have then an effects NRI. It's whether or not you believe that you be prejudiced in your thinking, or whether the members of the public may think that you've been prejudiced, or your judgment may be clouded because of the interactions that you've had with these people in the past. If it is, then you are still able to speak, but you must declare an effects and prejudicial NRI, and then you must leave and not take part in the discussion and the vote. If you don't think that your judgment would be clouded, or that members of the public might think that your judgment will be clouded because of your interactions, then you can stay and you can take part in the discussion and the vote. It's your call to make.
I don't feel my judgment is clouded because of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move on to Councillor Gazzard.
Present, effects NRI for item 17, I'm an Exmouth Town Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Haggerty.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Anne Hall.
Present and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Howell.
Present and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
And present and no declarations.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Eileen Ragg.
Present, no declaration.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I just suggest to members that if you think you may have an issue with a possible prejudicial interest, if you're coming up to an item, that you discuss it with Mr. Hunter before the meeting, so that we don't kind of do all this in public session, because potentially it could be confidential information, and I think it would be much better if we did that beforehand. Okay, so on to registered speakers. You can find the speakers for today's planning applications on page 4 of the agenda. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any comments on those minutes? Oh, no, that's right. No. Thank you. Good point. So we'll move on swiftly from that one. Sorry, it does say the minutes will be added to the next meeting in April. I'm not reading my script properly. Okay, apologies, Wendy.
No apologies. We have a full committee.
Oh, right. Yeah, looks pretty full today. Excellent. Declarations of interest we've done. Matters of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, to agree any items to be dealt with after the public have been excluded. There is one item under item 13, as you will be aware. We don't take the vote on that yet, do we? It's just to make members aware that there will be that item in item 13. And so we can go on to planning appeals statistics, pages 5 to 22, an update from Mrs. Ormsby, Development Manager.
Good morning. So looking through the appeal decisions, the appeals of note that we've had through, I think we might have briefly referenced it at the last meeting, but it's now included in this report. So we've had the decision in for the solar array at Winslade Park. The appeal was allowed, and that was the inspector concluding that the that any of the adverse impacts would be very localised in terms of any landscape impacts in particular, and that there would be adequate public open space access following the development. And he also gave some weight to the fact that it was a temporary 25-year permission. He concluded that the public benefits would outweigh any harm. So that was allowed. Then we have had, again, I think we did discuss this briefly last meeting. We've had the decision in for the application by McCarthy and Stone at the former council offices at the Knoll for a mixture of extra care and dwellings and a care home building. Again, that appeal was allowed. The inspector concluding that he felt that it was well designed, would sit comfortably within its setting, and would not have an unacceptable adverse impact on residential amenity. And then we have another one which had come to committee, which was Lily Farm Vineyard at Budley Salterton, and this was refused in line with the officer recommendation, but I think there was some debate about that. That was for the construction of managers' accommodation on the site. That appeal was dismissed. So those are the appeal decisions of note, unless anybody's got any questions about any of the others.
I've just got one, Wendy. The McCarthy and Stone, the offices in Knoll, were there any costs awarded against the council on that one?
No, there was no cost claim submitted.
There was no claim?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councillor Barlow.
I just wonder if you could tell us, when was the last time that this council was awarded costs against it for an appeal?
Check. We have had
We've
a few.
had that question before.
Yeah. We have had some costs.
Quite recently, I think.
Recently not on a relatively minor, I think it's some matter that hadn't actually come to committee. We did get a costs award. And I would need to think back and check, but we can get that information for you if you would like. We will be getting, I think, at May committee, we'll have the annual appeals report, which summarises effectively what's happened with appeals over the last year. And I will make sure that we can include in that report any details of any costs awarded against us.
That'd be lovely, thank you.
We didn't with Dewsons because we ultimately did not defend, and as a consequence of that, the appellant didn't apply for costs.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Mike. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Just to highlight, I mean, the Knoll decision, it's very short and sweet what you've actually reiterated, but it's several pages long, the actual decision itself, that went into detail, reasonable amount of detail about GP surgeries, about South West Water, about highways and everything else, and just literally saying on each one of them, they're the statutory authority or they're the competent body, you should just listen to them. It was quite clear and quite definitive, and it was just one of those things I want to raise. We need to be really careful when we go against the advice given to us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Howe. Wise words as always. Okay, that brings us on to item 8 then, which is planning application 242576 FUL, the former school. Oh no, sorry, I've skipped one. 241849 FUL, 30 and 32 Queen Street, Seaton, and that's pages 84 to 102 in your document pack. Okay, and I'll go over to Mrs. Ormsby for the report there.
This is an application for demolition of an existing conservatory, construction of a single-storey rear extension with a roof terrace above at 30 and 32 Queen Street. And here's the location plan. It's quite faint here, but this here, oh, let me just get my laser pointer on. So the site is this property in here. So it's sat within Seaton Town Centre, so within the built-up area boundary, where the principle of this form of development would be acceptable. So what we're looking at is the details of it and whether or not it has any adverse impacts. What this does show is the dense arrangement of dwellings and commercial uses within the vicinity of the site. 30 and 32, like much of its neighbours, is mixed use with a commercial shop on the ground floor and residential above. This aerial photo shows, this is the property here, this is 30 and 32, and you can see that at the moment there's a rear garden. You can't make out terribly clear, but there is a small conservatory in here. And you can also see that neighbouring properties have got extensions with raised terraces, raised terrace above on this one here, 34 and 36. But it does show the distance. There is still a sort of a gap to the boundary with this extension here, this void. You can also see here, this is the public car park, and you can see that, and you'll see more clearly with some photographs, that it's possible to view through to the back of this property. And you can also see these are properties along here that look directly back towards the application site. This is a slightly larger block plan, and this shows the access. This is a shared alleyway which is used to access both for these properties here and also the application site. Although the ownership details indicate that whilst I believe there's a right to pass over it, the alleyway is actually in the ownership of the adjoining property. And also just to point out that the officer from their site visit thinks that this is not true representation of the size of the neighbouring extension and roof terrace. And you could see from that Google image, it doesn't actually abut the boundary as closely as is indicated in this site, in this particular drawing. So this shows the proposed work. So the proposal is to build an extension, so a ground floor, providing accommodation at ground floor with a roof terrace above. And you can see that it pretty much fills the existing garden area, with the conservatory having been demolished. This shows the boundary of the conservation area, which is down here. So the site lies well within the conservation area. And this is also worth noting 12 and 13 Woodbine Place, which rear elevation looks out towards the application site, and also just showing the proximity. And this is effectively the access path that comes, this is an access path into Woodbine Place here, with their principal elevations facing towards the site. And this again more accurately shows how close the neighbouring extensions come to the boundary. So you can see that there is space between them and their rear boundaries. The current proposal would be coming out and coming up much more closely into this area. So these are the existing elevations of the property. So you can see the conservatory and rear windows on the back. You can see the relationship, the floor plan at the moment. You've got the retail unit on the ground floor, leading into conservatory, and then there's a garden space at the back. And this is the flat on the upper floor, which currently, as believed, has use of the garden. And these are the proposed elevations. So the proposal is to, you can see from the floor plans, effectively infill the majority of the garden area to create an extension to the retail unit at ground floor. And then the walls rise up above the roof, effectively, of the extension, to create an enclosed roof terrace, and with alterations to the windows up here, insertion of doors would then be accessed by the first floor flat to create a roof terrace. The application has been amended since it originally came in. Originally, it was just a solid walls right to the full height. And to try to reduce the visual impact, they have reduced the height of the solid rendered walls and added obscure glass on the top to give the necessary height to ensure privacy and to prevent overlooking to neighbours. But what you will note, looking at these elevations, is that it is just a blank rendered elevation with no sort of visual interest or articulation. It does look like a very utilitarian building with no sort of architectural design that would be complementary to the building itself or to the conservation area. These are some 3D visuals that just show the building from a sort of more of a bird's eye view. But I think what's noted is the screen around here doesn't seem to show the height in the way that it is shown on the building. So if you just worth noting, so the windows have changed. So this is the top across here of the height of that obscure glaze. So obviously you won't see through. They're showing that as if you can see through it. You won't see through it because it will be that sort of opaque glass. So just in terms of looking at photos, just noticing that the height of the structure comes sort of halfway through the height of the windows. And now we've got some photographs. So this shows views of the property as it currently is from the car park. The car park is not in the conservation area. The conservation area boundary is the red wall here. And there's a gate here into this access way, and the gate is open. When the gate is open, obviously you see clearly through. If the gate is closed, you will see a lot less of the structure. But one of the concerns of the conservation officer has been the fact that the design is very unsympathetic to the conservation area and would have a negative, would fail to preserve and enhance the conservation area. So this is a closer view of the rear of the site from the private path that serves Woodbine Place. And that shows the neighbouring. So this is the application site, and this is the neighbour here. And as you can see, the top of their raised terrace is here. And the top, if you're looking at these windows, if you remember from the plans we looked at, the height of the top of that obscure glazing is going to be coming at this kind of level. And this is Woodbine Terrace here. So you can see this is number 12 Woodbine Place. And that ground floor window is the living dining room of that property. So one of the concerns of officers is having a structure built at this height and right out so close in front of the window of number 12, is that it is going to appear overbearing. And there's also concerns about loss of light to that room, which is a primary accommodation, and also to their little courtyard that they have in front here, which is their only external amenity space. There has been a daylight survey submitted with the planning application, but there have been some concerns that it hasn't, it doesn't properly assess how all of the impacts would potentially be on the neighbours, and so officers are not giving great weight to the findings of that particular survey. This shows a bit more clearly, so this is the access way that comes in to 12 and 13 Woodbine Place, and that is the porch of number 12, and its window is set in behind the one that we were looking at previously. And this also is the living room to number 13, obviously not looking quite so directly out onto the application site as number 12. And this is taken from the existing garden. You can see that the ground levels are set lower, and the fencing will be retained and the extension built within that area. And that's looking towards the side of 11 Woodbine Place. And this is the shared access way. So this is how you would, the access, so which I think, yeah, there's access into the rear extension here, but this is the access which is shown on the ownership boundary to be owned by the neighbours, but we do believe there is a right of access. And the issue here is that by infilling the garden in its entirety with the extension for the shop, they haven't indicated where the commercial waste would be stored for the shop. And they have said that they would put it in this alleyway, but they don't own the alleyway. And there's also not a lot of space in this alleyway if you were to have bins stored within it. So that's a question that remains unanswered. This is a view from the private path to the front, the north of 12 to 13 Woodbine Place, looking northeast across the site. And that's the neighbouring property that already has a roof terrace behind with a surrounding wall. But as I say, that is not coming up as high as the one on this side would. And also the relationship is different because the application site obviously has this relationship with Woodbine Place immediately adjacent, which the neighbouring property doesn't, because it's a mid-terrace property. So the key issues here, the key concerns of officers is that the proposed development would have an overbearing impact on neighbouring properties, in particular 12, but also 13 Woodbine Place, with potential loss of light to habitable accommodation. Also that it would have an adverse impact, fails to preserve and enhance the conservation area, and that there's it's not been demonstrated that they can adequately provide bin storage areas for the retail unit. So notwithstanding the fact that obviously providing additional floor space for the retail unit would be a positive thing for a commercial use in the town centre, it's considered that the adverse impacts of this development outweigh those benefits, and it's recommended for refusal for the 3 reasons set out in the officer report relating to neighbour amenity, adverse impact on the conservation area, and inadequate refuse storage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ormsby. So we'll move on now to the applicant, Kerry-Ann Betty. You have 3 minutes. If you just press one of the buttons on the microphone, it'll work.
I'm the owner and resident of both 30 the shop and 32 my home. I have lived in Seaton now for over 10 years, raising my family and running our small business. The planning application we have submitted is to turn our current ground floor courtyard used by my business and our family into a ground floor internal space for our business and roof terrace garden on top for our family. The extension of space for our business will mean we can take on a further 2 members of staff to help us run wellness and creative workshops, talks and small gatherings supporting wellbeing and mental health. It will also mean that local self-employed wellness professionals such as healers, massage therapists, art therapists and Reiki professionals will have access to a self-contained room to offer their services to the community and tourists. We have 33 support logged comments, a mixture of locals and tourists visiting Seaton having found our business online. There's also a logged comment of support from our next door neighbour at 34. We have a following of over 20k on one of our social media platforms alone, and we're really trying to put Seaton on the map for places to visit in Devon. We currently run regular workshops and sessions in our conservatory and have a waiting list of people who would love to attend if we can create a bigger space more suitable for these gatherings. We welcome people of all faiths and spiritual backgrounds, giving everyone the opportunity to get to know each other and make connections. The proposed roof terrace being attached to our flat would give my family a space to relax, together with our own courtyard. Gardening's my hobby and I use it to unwind after work. I see that there's 3 points being raised and I wanted to address them directly. The outlook for the one and only objector, number 12, is currently into the fence from their ground floor and into our courtyard from their top floor, with glimpses across to the roof terrace at the neighbours of 34. The proposed development will have very little impact on this outlook. They'll continue the same outlook from the ground floor and their top floor will have a similar outlook, but our courtyard would just be slightly raised from the ground. The Daylight and Sunlight survey is carried out by a professional accredited company and has passed, confirming that no harm to daylight or sunlight would be caused by the proposed development. And the outlook for number 13, I don't believe would change, but please see the evidence. The majority of this proposed development wouldn't be seen, as it would be behind a fence and retaining wall, and that which would be seen we feel is extremely similar to neighbouring properties and adjoining property at number 34 and adjoining terrace. Should the proposed and ongoing arrangement for bin storage arise as a problem, we're fully prepared to store them internally in our utility room of 32 and our storage room of 30. Thank you.
Thank you. You can breathe now. Do you think you could just turn the mic off? Thank you. Well, you accomplished that in the time. So just relax now. Okay, members, do we have any questions first? Councillor Barlow, you never let me down.
Thank you, Chair. We say that the light, I can't remember what it's called, sorry, the daylight and sunlight results are inconclusive, but it shows it on the 12 Woodbine Place as the only one that is affected. And it shows a 4.5, 4.9 and 5.5 loss of light in the hallway and domestic room from windows 8, 9 and 10. Does that not matter? Or, I mean, you say you haven't got anything, but to me that shows that it's the only one that there is a loss of light. I don't know if 5% is a lot, but it's from when they're only getting 23% of light before vertical sky component, and then it's down to 19%, that obviously makes a difference.
So I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I wasn't saying that we didn't consider there was loss of light, but the response from the Environmental Health Officer is, and I'll read it out because it's not very long, it says the submitted daylight and sunlight assessment shows that windows 10 of 12 Woodbine Place is the most effective window in terms of impact from the proposed development. This window leads directly onto a habitable room, living room, as shown on Rightmove, but I cannot see the results of the daylight distribution test on window 10 or any justification for not doing a sunlight to window test for windows 10 and 11 of this property. This information is required before any recommendation can be made. So the Environmental Health Officer view is it shows that there is going to be an impact on one of the windows, but it hasn't assessed the impact on 2 of the other windows. So that's where there's a little bit of uncertainty.
But again, so that they came back on that, didn't they? And they said basically because it isn't south-facing, you're not allowed, you don't do a daylight check on non-south-facing windows. Do we accept that or not?
I think you can do it. So it's not just south-facing windows that that get light. I mean, I recognise that north-facing windows don't get direct sunlight into them, but they will still get light, and east and west-facing windows will get sunlight at certain times of the day.
Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Could you put the photograph up, Wendy, of the alleyway, please? That's the one. Yeah. Yeah, there. Did I hear correctly that there is a possibility that the bins from the property might go into that alleyway? Because if they do, surely it's a health and safety and fire issue as well.
My understanding is that it's been that has been suggested that bins could be stored in the alleyway, but one of the concerns and the issues that the case officer has noted is that the alleyway is not in the ownership of the applicant. It is shared in terms of access, and yes, if they were in there, they could cause obstruction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair. Can we go to the picture of the drawing with the two, with the superimposed of the two, back. That's it, stop there, thank you. That's it. Looking at this, now I think it went back through Seaton Town Council Planning Committee, and they've reduced the size of the wall to put up the opaque glass, so it's the same size as the wall next to it, I believe. So both walls are the same size. Is one of my questions there. It's not going any higher than anything else. The fence in front of the extension, if you go down the alley, in fact, if you look from the car park down through the gate, it's normally closed, but it's open on. If we can go to the picture there, with looking from the car park down, right, looking straight down there, that gate is normally closed. There's a sign on it to keep it closed because it's private to residents. They don't want people from the car park coming into there. You can only just see the top of the extension next door of the building there. So I personally don't think it's going to change anything at all. It's actually going to improve the area. The path from the car park all the way around to the door to go out into Queen Street itself, it is a clear pathway, a clear entrance for the people. And
Councillor Haggerty, have you got a question?
Sorry, my main question is, all right then, sorry, I apologise. Can I go back to the height of the wall then? The wall was reduced in the plans, and the windows on top are no higher, the opaque glass on top is no higher than the wall next door in the drawing.
Well, I'll get Mrs. Orbisby to comment on that, although it's not particularly a question.
So the drawings that we've got are not, so you can see that line across there is the top of the window, of the obscure glazing. So you can see, so if you go back actually, because the windows change, so that's the top of the window line at the moment. Obviously the windows are being lowered, effectively becoming doors. And if you then, so they're sort of at that point relative to the windows. And then if you look at the photographs, and again, you can also see inside section, the height here relative to the eaves of the building. So then if you go to the photographs, which are the ones that showed. So this, this shows the height of this is this is the side wall, which I'm presuming it is, of the neighbour's extension. The height is beneath the window sills, whereas the proposed one will be coming more across here, so it will be higher than the neighbouring roof extension, the wall of the neighbouring extension. It will be up here. The wall will probably be a similar height, but then on top of it, it will have the obscure glass panel.
Can I just go back on that, please? I believed, unless I read the plan wrong, when it went back through Seaton Town Council, that the wall was reduced to allow the opaque glass to go on top, to go to the same size as the building next door.
So yes, the extent, because it originally came in as just solid rendered wall right to this level here. So in response to some of the concerns that were raised, the plans have been amended. So the solid wall will be of a similar height to the neighbour, but on top of that will be the additional run of obscure glass.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Faithful, then Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just get clarification as to which house we're talking about that's having the issue with the loss of light? Is it the one directly south of the 12? But number 12, which number 12 are we talking about?
So this property here, so and there's another picture, no, back. Yeah, sorry. So this is this property here, that's the living room, dining room window, number 12, and I'll show you where that is on a site plan. So it's this property here. So the window that we were just looking at is here, and the extension will be, you can see that. So this is where the extension will be, coming off the back there. So this is the view out here. So again, if you can see the eaves, and then if we go and look again at, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I think I'll get a pretty clear idea. The other point for me, I was looking at the images and some of them give the impression that ground levels are different, but I don't know, maybe it's just a look on the images. Can you clarify what's the ground level from one to the other or the surrounding area?
So the ground level of the application site is lower. It drops down, so this fence is raised up, and you can see from the photos inside, so you can see this is the ground floor of the shop. This is the conservatory that would be removed. So this is the level that the extension would be set at, and that's the fence we were looking at. So just behind there is the window to number 12, Woodbine Close. So yes, there's a big drop down in levels between Woodbine Close and the application site.
So, I mean, it might be possible to lower the level of the flat roof, possibly, because it seems to get an enormous amount of height to go up to the height that it's going, doesn't it?
So the additional height, if it was, the additional height is because they're creating effectively the safety boundary and also the privacy screen that they're putting around the roof terrace. If it was just a flat roof, single story extension, it's unlikely that there would be any adverse impacts. The impacts are caused by the additional height for enclosing the roof terrace.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Jenny Brown.
Hello there. Yeah, so are you saying the walls are the same height on the terraces, the solid wall, not the glazing, but the solid walls are the same height, because there's a definite difference there and then you've got the glass above, and you've also got these modern houses built. Are they in the conservation area as well? The ones in front of it? Because if no, they're built as well, but yet we're worrying about the conservation area. But I just was saying, you said the walls were the same height, but they're not actually the same height on the 3D image. It looks like a big difference. It's just the glass that probably brings them up to the same height.
So it's just going, so this is what we were talking about. So this is the wall of the neighbouring roof terrace, extension of roof terrace. So what we're saying is that the height of the proposed extension of roof terrace, the solid walls would come to about the same height, but on top of that, in addition, is then the obscure glass screen. I'll show you that on the elevations.
Can we look on the 3D one? There's no way that's showing the walls the same height.
I don't think it's a very good representation, because if you look at the elevations, you can see, so if you look at the neighbouring property here, let me see if I can just zoom into this bit. Can I zoom? Oh, I have to take my laser pointer off, which doesn't help. So you see this long window here, that's the neighbour's window. And we saw that the neighbour's wall came to the sill level of that window. Then we look at the proposed one. So the wall here is slightly higher than the sill height of the neighbour's window. And then on top of that, you have the glass screen, which takes you midway up the height of these enlarged windows. So if you want to go back again, so that's the sill height of the neighbour, the height of the wall is slightly higher. So then we go back to that picture. Sorry. That's the window we were just talking about. So their wall is about the same height, is beneath the sill of that window. What we saw on the proposed elevations is the solid wall will come slightly above this sill height. And on top of that, it will have a run of an additional height. I'd have to check, I think it's about another 50 millimetres of 500 mils of obscure glass. So and whilst obscure glass doesn't look and feel as heavy as masonry, it nevertheless is a solid structure that would be running to the outer edge of this site.
Okay, Councillor Anne Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the picture where you're showing the levels from the proposed site with the big fence, how high up that fence or above that fence is this extension going to show with brick? Because I'm saying the opaque, to me, you still get some light through it, but it's the brick feeling of overbearing, which is my concern. And I just would like to understand that. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the top there of the fence we were just looking at. And the solid wall will be coming up to about just above the existing sill height. And then on top of that is 50 centimetres of obscure glass. So it's going to be at about this height. So that's the height of the fence, as is, because that fence is the same height as that fence. It's going to come to about this level, where my cursor is.
Is that, I would say, because we're not looking for like, because the windows are now going to be turned into doors, so they're coming down lower. So does that give us the same
Yeah,
idea?
I'm using the neighbour's window as a point of reference because
Right.
that doesn't change.
Okay.
So if you're looking at that, and if we go again back to the proposal, but just think about where that sill is, and then go back to the proposed drawing, and you can see that's the sill height of the neighbour's window unchanged. And then you've got a slight increase in height of the solid wall, and then a further 50 centimetres of obscure glass panel on top.
You're right down the bottom of the list, Ian. Councillor Bailey, Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Could we please go back to the alleyway?
Could have done a site inspection in the time we've been here.
But it saves the journey time and the carbon footprint, Chair, so we're all right. There we are. So there's been quite rightly concern about putting the bins in this alleyway. So it's quite reasonable to assume that when the wall, if it's passed, when the wall is built, you could put a recess into the wall, which would go through into the shop building, which would only be probably the size of this table. And you could store your bins
Not
in
shown
there.
on the plans, councillor Bailey.
No, it's not
They,
with it.
they
but
might
I'm just-
come back to us to do that, but
I'm just
it's not
suggesting
shown
that
on the
that
plans.
is an easy way of fixing that problem. And also, I really think we've gone through the motions several times.
Is this a question, Brian? Because
No,
believe it or not,
it'll
we're
end
still
up
on
being a
questions.
proposal of acceptance, Chair.
Well, we're nowhere near that. We haven't even finished questions
Well, I think
yet.
we should be near that, Chair, with
Well,
respect.
you might well think so, but we haven't quite got there yet. Okay,
Keep
so
going round in circles, Chair. Thank
we'll
you
get
very
through
much.
the questions. Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair, and there will be a question in this. So when you deal with a roof terrace, there are always three issues. One is privacy. Two is, I would call it overbearing and overlooking. And then there is the issue of noise, and noise has been raised by one of the objectors. Apologies if I missed it, but I couldn't see any form of noise impact assessment. And the case officer seems to have dismissed noise to me quite readily. I'm quite surprised by this because what happens is, particularly with a roof terrace of some size, you take a noise level, which is currently a ground level behind a fence, and you put it up in the air. And noise travels, and I would expect to see some form of noise impact assessment to understand whether, because of the layout of this site, that noise is echoed in any way or that it's actually minimized because of that. And I would just like to know if there was a reason why there isn't a noise impact assessment, and apologies if I have missed it. Thank you.
No, there wasn't a noise impact assessment. I think the officer took the view that it isn't unusual in tight urban areas for outdoor amenity spaces to be in close proximity to neighbouring properties and neighbouring windows. So the view was that they didn't feel that there was any going to be any unreasonable levels of noise impact by having that roof terrace as proposed.
But I would just argue there is a lot of difference between a small roof terrace that somebody puts a couple of chairs out during this country's ever-changing weather conditions than there is in creating what is effectively a new garden space up on a roof terrace. I think it's different, and personally I just think we've missed a trick here somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Take the garden chairs out and take them straight back in again, in my experience. Okay, Councillor Simon Smith.
I've got two questions. With the rest of the committee's approval, could I suggest that when we have photos on reports, could they be lettered or numbered so that when we're referring to photos, we can have a good reference to them and save a bit of time in that way? The second question is the photo that you've been using, Wendy, to show us the levels of things. If I can have that, because just so I've got my bearings, to the left of that photo is north, isn't it? And to the right of that photo is south to southwest. That's the only question I've really got in terms of trying to get my own bearings in terms of where light's coming from. Sorry, it was the previous photos from the ejector, yes. These photos. So the ones we passed, I think.
Sorry, I was hoping they would be looking for the north point on these drawings. There should be one. I believe north is literally
From Google Maps, it
but-
looks like that. It's pretty much north-south.
There we go.
Queen
Yes,
Street.
it is. So it does. It is. So effectively, north is. So in terms of the impact on number 12, 12 is north facing. The windows in number 12 are north facing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Ormsby mentioned that and also pointed out that there's still light coming through north-facing windows. Thank goodness. Councillor Jenny Brown.
I wanted to ask the applicant if that is right, if their wall is going to be the same height as the one next door and then glass on top, because it's not being clear from these 3D images. Can I do that?
Yeah, we have to go by what is actually on the plans.
I'm looking at the 3D image that gives a totally wrong impression. I just wanted to know where the wall was finishing and the glass was finishing, and I didn't know if the applicant had a different opinion to what the officers had.
Well, the drawings do show the height relative to the windows. I think what you've got is an extension with a solid wall on top and then some obscure glazing. So it's that sort of construction. And the bottom of the windows, well, certainly one of them at least, I think possibly more, is going to be extended down to make doors. Okay, Councillor Barlow, we finally got to you, Ian.
Yeah, very quickly, Chair, because I must admit we do seem to be dragging this one out. And again, just going back to the 3D view, if you zoom in on it, it actually looks like the new wall is higher than the one next door. I think it's just an optical illusion on that one. The question I was going to ask, and I'm pretty sure, because I looked for it, couldn't see it, do you have an internal height of the wall to the top of the glass? Because that would help with, is it going to be overlooking from inside out? So is there from the floor of the new balcony to the top of the glass, is there any sort of height? I don't think there is, because I couldn't see it anyway.
So it's referenced in the officer report. There will not be an overlooking issue with this current proposal. The combination of the wall and the obscure glazed panel would give sufficient height to prevent overlooking, and I think it's referenced in the report as being 1.9 metres. But I'll just check that.
It's not those levels there, is it? I can't read that.
Yes, there are steps down onto the roof.
Okay, who else? Somebody else? Yeah, Councillor Maddie Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very large extension on a small site, taking it all up. I couldn't see if there's a door from the extension into the alleyway for emergencies, and if they're proposing of doing a deal with next door to put the bins in the alleyway, surely that would be a fire hazard and wouldn't be allowed. Is there any other way of getting the bins in and out of that property other than that alleyway?
So there's nothing, I mean, this is just, I've just enlarged the floor plans here. So this is the extension. So this is the alleyway that we were looking at. So there's a doorway from the extension into the alleyway, but, oh, sorry. Yeah, because I've enlarged it, but hopefully you can see that there's a doorway into the alleyway from the extension. So there's access, but there is no, there's no sort of separate area indicated for waste, storage of waste. So they could physically get out onto the road with the rubbish, but we wouldn't want to be encouraging wheelie bins stored out onto the road, on the road frontage.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've talked about this issue of where waste is going to be stored. I mean, basically, we don't know at the moment, and we're speculating because that's one of the issues officers have, is that the issue of how they will store the waste in future, which previously was out the back, how that will be dealt with. Okay, so we are now ready to move on to debate, I think. Councillor Howe, if I could just hear from you first.
I don't know if you'll want to hear from me, but that's a different matter. I don't believe we can approve this, pure and simple. As much as I really do sympathise with the applicant, I do believe there is a scheme that can be had here. I don't believe this is it. Now, I'll start off with justification for recommending refusal as per officers, in that without the correct information on light in particular on the neighbour, we should never just impose bad conditions on a neighbouring property without the evidence. Pure and simple. We have to consider that neighbour. We haven't, from our own expert officer's opinion, got the evidence needed to determine this. So we shouldn't ever approve it in its current form. Then when we look at the plans, and as all the debate's been had, this is blatantly on this plan higher than the next door neighbour's wall. No query about that. It is blatant. It is there, it is clear. Not by much, but it is. And then you've got the glass on top. Then we've got the bin question and everything else. All of which add to the fact. The only one I don't agree with is the conservation officer, because I don't think you'll see it much. But that's a different question altogether. I am worried about the neighbours. I am worried about the impact and everything else. So as such, I'm happy to go along with refusal as per officers. Thank you.
Okay, that was a proposal, Mike. I take it. So, Councillor Barlow, you're seconding.
Yes, I do want to second that, and I totally agree with everything, especially on the conservation area. I don't think we're always taught by our learned solicitor that we should only put down things we can actually defend, and I don't see how we can defend that this is going to damage the conservation area in that area. I think that actually the vertical sky component, Appendix 2 of the daylight and sunlight results, does show that 12 Woodbine Place is going to be detrimentally affected by, well, looking at that, about 20% of the light they get, or the sky they get. They don't do a sunlight because, of course, you don't get sunlight in the north-facing window, but you do get that light coming in from a thing. And I also think, I always look at things, if I lived there, could I live with it? And to me, putting something right in front of your window when you don't have a huge amount of window from or light coming in anyway from there, and I did visit this yesterday, to me that is unreasonable of the people. I understand and I sympathise, just like Mike does, with people wanting to expand their shop. I think that's a great thing. You can't have it all, and sometimes you've got to set that back and perhaps accept you're going to have a smaller terrace out there. And I would like to see a proper dimensions from the floor of the terrace to the top of that window, because I don't believe you can get 7 foot in there, even with steps down out of a door. So I think that it's just perhaps trying to be a little bit too greedy, take too much. You can't have it all. If you want an extension on your shop, you need to give a little bit of your garden space. And if you look at the way the garden is set out below anyway, I think you could probably get, because the walls slope in with all the other bits, I think you could probably get the same sort of floor area up above by removing it from number 12 and taking it back a little bit from the front. And I think that might be more acceptable. But certainly at the moment, I will be happy to second this, to refuse.
Thank you. So we have a proposal and seconded to refuse, but I'm aware we haven't actually had any debate yet. So I'll allow one or two speakers and then we'll go to a vote. So Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair. I respect the light report. Where this property is, the sunlight itself in seating there don't come round to there till after lunch. So it's always going to be in a shaded area where it is. I understand that the floor area is lower. I'm still confused, obviously, with the 3D plan, I'm sure. And I'm also confused where Seaton Town Council approved it because it was dropped 1.5 metres, whether I've read something there wrong or not. I agree with the people who are trying to enhance their business and grow that. And whether they can come down another step or they've got to change the plan on that. But I don't think it makes a lot of difference in the back of this building of how it will affect everybody else, purely because where it is and how it is cornered from the car park. It's not going to cause any. The gate will always 99% shut there to look down it. Whether this has got to come back another time, I don't know, because of the way things are with the light. But they've had the light test. Noise. I do agree with Councillor Matt Hall about the noise. I was surprised we didn't have that one there. But the noisiest thing we've got around that area is seagulls. You're not going to calm them down, quite honestly. I disagree on this time with respect to the officers. I think this should be approved because we're looking at the business and we're looking at the yard itself. Looking at the only people looking at it, yes, I agree with number 12. I really sympathise with that. But they're also looked down on as well from the buildings above them as well. So they're constantly looked down as well. So I think there is a match to the building next door. For me, I would like to propose to approve it. Thank you.
Well, we can't at the moment, Del, yet. Councillor Bailey, Brian. Can you use the mic, Brian?
Chair, I agree with Councillor Haggerty entirely. And if the vote was to be lost for refusal, I would like to second one for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wragg.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to endorse the comments made by Councillor Howe. Absolutely right. We should always consider neighbouring properties and the impact. It's a close relative of mine said many years ago, every decision made in planning affects somebody's life. And this would. It would maybe affect the life of the applicant, but not to the degree that it would the neighbour. And I'd also like to endorse Councillor Howe's comments regarding officers' recommendations. We've gone against officers' recommendations in the past, and it's been to the cost of the council taxpayer and also the reputation of the council. Sorry. So, well done, Councillor Howe, for speaking.
Thank you. Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment on what Councillor Howe has said earlier, that what we're looking at immediately here, I wouldn't support, but it doesn't mean to say that you can't do something there. It's just what we're actually discussing is what's the problem.
Yeah, I think you speak for us all there, Peter. I think we feel that there could be something there, but possibly this isn't it. It's maybe just a little too much of the space there, and that would enable them to address the question of bin storage, perhaps bring it back a little from the boundary, and have a little bit less impact on neighbours. So with that in mind, members, we will go to a vote. So we have a proposal to refuse in line with officer's application. So all those in favour? Sorry, Wendy, yeah.
Was the proposer suggesting that we remove the reason for refusal on conservation grounds?
Yeah, good point. Mike, were you suggesting that we, in case this comes to appeal, that we remove the reference to conservation?
I don't believe conservation is a good reason for refusal. But I'm open with committee. I'm the seconder. I'm happy to say it should be removed. I've got no qualms either way, shall we say, on that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to second this removed.
Yeah, I must say, when I looked at those pictures from the car park, I think the visual impact is pretty minimal here. And so long as there's no other impact on the conservation area, being out of keeping or anything like that, then I think that was the suggestion, Wendy. Yeah. Okay, we'll go to a vote then. So if you're all still awake, all those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12.
And those against?
South Chapel.
1, 2. And any abstentions? Councillor Brown. Oh, both councillors Brown. Yeah.
I didn't see the against. You were a bit quick off the mark there.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Against, please. 1.
That was Del and Brian.
2.
Yeah.
And abstentions?
2.
2.
Yeah, that makes 16.
Lovely.
Okay. The maths is satisfied. Okay, so that one is refused. How are you feeling, members? Do you want a break? Yeah. Should we take 10 minutes? Let's make it just 10 minutes, please. Back at 25 past. 1 minute.
Who's on it then? So we're not
Okay,
go
members,
viral then.
if we could. Oh, just waiting for our planning solicitor, as you were. It's a minute earlier in Burnley, isn't it? I know. Okay, everybody. So we now move on to agenda item 8, which is Ottery St Mary, the former school Yonder Street. And so it's over to Mrs Hemsworth for the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. This application is before committee as the recommendation of officers is in conflict with comments received from the ward councillor and from the parish council. So in terms of the application, the site is here. It's the former boys' school, which sits just to the south of Yonder Street. It's in the built-up area boundary of Ottery St Mary, and it's also in the conservation area. The boundary of the conservation area is this dotted yellow line you can see on this image. The building is included within the Ottery St Mary and West Hill neighbourhood plan as a community facility of value. And there's a large hard-standing area to the rear of the building, which is the former playground, which is enclosed by relatively tall retaining walls, as there's quite a change in level across the site here. Ooh, sorry, I've skipped a slide. Oh, hang on. Sorry, that's not the slide I was expecting. I'm just going to skip through. Apologies for this. There we go. So the building is noted within the conservation area appraisal as a key building of architectural importance, which makes a significant contribution to the townscape. The building is in the Victorian Gothic style and constructed of chert stone, and has contrasting dressed buff stonework surrounds and buff stonework quoins. There's ornamental brickwork banding you can see there above the windows and the string courses, and it has steeply sloping slate roofs with some areas of plain tiles, and stone mullion windows to the north and the south elevations. The building also has a number of gabled and half-hipped dormer windows, which are roofed in red clay plain tiles. Right, sorry, I'm just going to skip back now. So in terms of the actual application, there's very few changes proposed to the external elevations of the building, but in terms of the internal arrangement of spaces, at the moment, the whole of the ground floor of the building is used as a community space, and the application looks to insert a couple of extra stories of accommodation. The left-hand part of the building here will be retained as a community facility. The existing extension at the rear will be demolished and replaced with a much better quality extension, which will contain a utility area and an accessible toilet for use of the community space. There'll be a staircase inserted there to access the apartment at the first floor level, and then this wing on this side will be divided into two 3-storey apartments. So the 1-bedroom flat at the first floor level will have an area of 60 square metres, that's a 1-bedroom apartment, and then these 2 apartments on the other side of the building will be 3-bedroom apartments, which will have an area of 121 square metres and 95 square metres respectively.
Sorry, could you use the cursor, please? Thank you.
Sorry. You need to get the laser pointer. There we go. Yeah, so this flat here will have an area of 60 square metres. This one's 95 square metres, and this one is 121 square metres across 3-storey. So that's the first floor of the building, and then the second floor of the building. So this is just the void over the roof, and then this is the second floor. So it will be another intermediate level of accommodation inserted with bedrooms at the second floor level. So in terms of the principle of development, in the absence of a 5-year housing land supply, the tilted balance applies, and permission for development proposals should be granted unless the adverse impacts of granting permission would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Additionally, NPPF paragraph 14 states that where the presumption in favour of development applies to housing and the adverse impact of allowing development that conflicts with a development plan is likely to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, provided the neighbourhood plan became part of the development plan 5 years or less before the date of the decision is made. So although the Ottery, St Mary and West Hill neighbourhood plan includes the building as an asset as a community facility of value, the neighbourhood plan is over 5 years old, and the plan does not include allocations for housing. Therefore, only limited weight can be given to that policy. And on this basis, the principle of development of the building is acceptable, subject to the other impacts of the development. The building derives its significance from its distinctive and imposing Victorian architecture, the decorative and architectural features and its high quality materials. So only one new window is proposed to the building. That's this window down here, which will provide an additional ground floor window to the community space, which will also be opaque glazed, so there aren't any issues with overlooking, and that would be a condition of the approval. The building would be re-roofed, and we would also look to impose conditions to ensure the quality of the conversion, so such as things like locations of proposed meter boxes, utility meter boxes, the quality of the windows and the roofing slate, and the locations of any flues and extract vents required in the course of the conversion. So with the conditions in place, the scheme would continue to preserve the character and appearance of the Ottery St Mary conservation area, and it would also have a positive impact in terms of ensuring the long-term viability of the existing building. In terms of the residential amenity impacts of the proposal, obviously the insertion of intermediate floors within the building means that windows that are currently at very high level would become would subsequently have a view out, particularly these dormer windows to the west elevation. So we would look to impose a condition to state that these had to be opaque glazed. These are the secondary windows to the second floor bedrooms, so both second floor bedrooms would have an alternative view out either to the north or the south, but this would prevent occupiers looking out over the adjacent houses. And additionally, Environmental Health have requested a number of conditions on any approval to restrict working hours on the application. And they've also requested details of sound attenuation between the dwellings and the community space in excess of those required by the approved document E of the building regulations to ensure adequate amenity of future occupiers to prevent any noise impacts. So that's the front of the building. So you can see those west dormers there, which would have been glazed originally, but they've been infilled at some point. So to prevent overlooking, these would be infilled with opaque glazing. That's the rear of the building. So as I said, this rear extension would be coming down, and the proposed extension would be narrower and would better reflect the proportions of the existing building. The proposed extension uses much better quality materials, so would enhance the building as well. That's the front of the building. So there would be, so the only changes to the front would be the insertion of new windows up here, which would form the second floor story of accommodation to the front flat there. So in terms of the rear courtyard space, this is relatively spacious. So there would be 10 parking spaces provided for users of the dwellings and also users of the community space, which is currently used by a food bank. Drawings of bin and bicycle storage have been included with the application. There are no highways objections to the scheme, and the apartments are sustainably located within the town centre, within walking distance of facilities. So in terms of residential amenity, again, there's a couple of windows here on this side elevation that we would also look to impose a condition to insist on opaque glazing. This window here, again, this is a secondary window to the first floor apartment, so they would also have a view out of the bedroom here and another view out from the large dormer window to the living space on the north elevation. Further detail would be required by way of condition in respect of a landscaping scheme for the rear playground, detailing to delineation between the proposed vehicle parking areas and amenity areas for residents. So in conclusion, the application would lead to some loss of community space. The community space is currently used by a food bank in Ottery St Mary, and we have had some communication from them as part of the application. They say they're happy with the proposal. They only use the hall proposed to be retained at the moment, and they would like to stay in the building after the conversion. The proposal would allow for the long-term viable use of the existing building, would conserve and enhance the conservation area and provide much needed housing within the town centre. Therefore, the recommendation is to adopt the appropriate assessment and approve the application subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Peter, did you have a question?
Well, it's more a correction. Ottery Larder is not a food bank. It's that they collect surplus supermarket out-of-date products and they give it away to free. So it's to everyone. It's not a food bank is to specific people, whereas Ottery Larder is not. It's just there for anyone who ever wants to have it. So it's just a slight clarification. Yes, it's a clarification on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barlow, Ian.
And if you could just confirm, the way I read it, there was very, very little loss of space to the food larder, and the community service was going to, because they're only using that part of the hall anyway. So actually, although the Ottery neighbourhood plan...
Is this a question, Ian?
Well, it is a question, because you're saying that there is a loss, but I don't think there is a loss, is there? Or if it is, it's negligible.
So at the moment, the entire ground floor of the building, I'm just coming to it. So the entire ground floor of the building has an area of 225 square metres, but the sorry, I've referred to them as food bank because that's what they call themselves in the planning application, but at the moment they only use this hall, which is 75 square metres, which will be retained in the course of the conversion.
So they're not actually losing any space that they use. That's what I was trying to guess.
So they're not losing any space that they use.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. Councillor Ann Hall. Sorry, Anne, if I
That's okay.
got you the wrong way around there.
Thank you, Chair. It was on the parking. It's shared parking between residential and the community. I thought you said there were 10 spaces, but on the plan I can only see 5 cars parked. And are they the residential accommodation? Will they have specified parking spaces? Thank you.
So in that respect, we have imposed a condition to request further information because we don't have a detailed layout. The space is very large, so it's considered that there's absolutely plenty of space for separate residential parking. So there'd be 6 spaces for residents and then the remaining 4 spaces for the community use. And then we'd also request some residential amenity space for the use of residents as well. So that would be requested by way of condition.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eileen Wragg.
Thank you. Just a question. Has this building ever been applied for listing? Because it's a lovely old building, but until you get to the back of it, how did that happen?
Not that I'm aware, it hasn't. There's kind of national criteria for a building to meet the threshold to qualify as a listed building status, and given the kind of the changes that have been undertaken to this building, I suppose it's questionable whether it would meet that threshold, given that there's the loss of several of the existing windows. You've got that extension on the back. So no, I don't think it has ever been assessed for listing.
Thank you, Councillor.
But yeah, as I said in the report, it is noted as a kind of significant building within the conservation area that contributes to the townscape.
Yes, still a very attractive building, isn't it, even with the changes that have taken place. Okay, any further questions? Oh, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Could I get clarification? When all this work is going on, will Otley Larder have to vacate the building?
I can't answer that question. That would be down to the owner and the users of the community to negotiate the schedule of works and the operations and timing of the work. So it's not something that we could really control under the planning system.
Well, that is what was suggested to me, that they would have to vacate the premises while the work is being done, which will mean they will no longer exist because they've got nowhere else to go. And you said that they only use the smaller room. I was under the impression, I only base it on Facebook images because I'm not allowed in the building, that they put the food in the left-hand room, and they have other things like school uniforms and other products in the main hall. And so that I'm saying I'm only basing it on photographs on Facebook. So, you know, could I get some sort of clarification that they most definitely do not use the main hall?
I can only go on what we've been provided with, but we've had written correspondence from Ottery Larder that they only use that left-hand hall and that they're happy to stay in the building following the works.
Okay, any further questions?
Yeah.
Eileen.
Sorry, I should have asked this before. It says that the windows ground floor windows to the east are obscured glazing. Was that ever conditioned?
Yes, so absolutely, that would be conditioned. So if you look on the plan, these two windows are existing and they are already obscured. So this is a new window proposed to the rear of the community space, and so the condition would cover all of the side windows, basically. These ground floor windows overlooking the houses, this window here to the side of the first floor apartment, and then these two dormer windows here, which are the secondary windows to the second floor apartments here.
Okay. I think I'm right, Jill. Those bedrooms are only 1.5 metres in height. Is that right?
So there was a query regarding this during the determination period. So the red dotted line that's the area above 1.5 square meters, because it's in the eaves. So the applicant has clarified the area proposed for those bedrooms, and it is it's well in excess of the areas required by the nationally described minimum space standards.
Okay, you just have to watch not to bang your head when you go to bed, I guess. I think I've had tents that were taller than that. Okay, if no more questions, then we'll go into debate. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. I've read through this. I think it is. I think this is a good thing. I think we should recommend approval with the conditions. I'd like to add a condition that on the just to make deadly sure that the car parking spaces at the rear, 4 of them are reserved for the community hall. Because I don't think it's clear at the moment, and I always think that causes problems in the future. I think this ticks the boxes that at the end of the day, although in the Ottery neighbourhood plan, this is a community space, should be used as a community space, the use of it at the moment is going to be protected. So to me, you're actually protecting something for the future, and at the same time looking at their policy MP12, where they're looking to support, they would support smaller units, 1, 2 and 3 bedroom houses. So you basically get a 1, a 2 and a 3 bedroom house in this. I think at the end of the day, it ticks all the boxes. It creates and brings life into the town, and I have no hesitation but to recommending approval when you're ready for someone to do so, Chair.
Thank you. Actually, I've got a couple more. Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. Well, you say about the neighbourhood plan being out of date. The part of the reason Ottery has not renewed its neighbourhood plan is because they're waiting for East Devon District Council to get our local plan in place so we can work to that. My understanding of when we have had more than we needed in Ottery from the previous local plan, because the planning applications went through before our last local plan went through. So Ottery has got more than enough houses, and we've got a whole stack more for the new local plan. So I don't feel that is a really justified reason to suggest that it should be developed out. It is an important, it's been historically an important community asset for very many years. There've been all sorts of things been going on in the main hall. So I don't feel I can support this going away from being a community asset the way the present one. So I'm afraid I can't support that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second this. I think it'd be a really good thing to bring the building modernised and still retain the a third, I believe it's a third of the building be retained for the community for usage. So I would like to second this.
Okay, well, when we come to it. Okay, Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Sorry, Chair, the points that I was going to make have already been made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. If only everybody else was as brief as you. Councillor Eileen Wragg.
Thank you. I'd like to support this application. It complies with minimum living standards. It's also, I now pick up on what Councillor Faithful said. He said it's a community asset. It says here it's a community facility. There is a difference. Has it been registered as a community asset?
So it's included on the Ottery St Mary Neighbourhood Plan as a community facility of value. Which is
That's not the same as a registered
No,
community
no,
asset.
it's not the same.
Thank you.
No.
Okay. Councillor Mike Howe.
Thank you. I've got no problem with supporting this in principle. I have a question on condition 4 that you've suggested. Because it is such a lovely looking building, although not listed, but in conservation area, we're suggesting in this part that meter boxes and everything else be submitted to us when they're ready to install them. It reads to me. By then, surely that's a bit too late because we know where they're going to end up and it's all decided. I'm assuming, anyway, if it's housing, it's permitted development. Or does the conservation area give us some protection on meter boxes, etc.? Because 4 meter boxes effectively, because you've got to have the one for the existing building as well as the 3 apartments, can be quite a size. And it would be nice to have some clarity on that because I think the wording doesn't help us. I would rather see prior to commencement as used there instead of the before the relevant parts of the works, etc., etc., etc.
So it wouldn't fall under permitted development because the apartments would be apartments rather than houses, so they would not have permitted development rights once complete. And obviously, even if they were houses, they wouldn't have any permitted development rights until the development was complete. And in terms of whether a pre-commencement condition ought to be required for that, I think we would struggle to impose that they had to be, the details had to be required before they started on site because there are things that they could reasonably do without those meter boxes going in the building. And I think the reason for conditioning it is that we would expect to see internal meter boxes, so we wouldn't want to see meter boxes on the outside of the building. We'd want them to be inside where they can't be seen.
Thank you. And that gives me some reassurance, but that is the very point I think we're trying to avoid, is them starting work and then coming along and saying, well, we've got no space inside, they're going to go on the outside and probably on the front face and everything else. So that's all I'm trying to avoid, is to make sure we protect that building as best we can in the area it is, because it is still a lovely looking building, although not listed.
That's a good point, Mike. And we did have an example recently of a building that was approved. The plans didn't show the extractor vents, and when they went on, there was an outcry. So I think we do need to be a little bit careful that we do have this in the plans, certainly at some stage. Whether it should be before commencement of the whole thing or at a given stage, I don't know.
So we could look to introduce an earlier trigger point for that condition, so possibly not pre-commencement, but possibly prior to the insertion of the first mezzanine floor, if that would give more confidence that the details would be required at an earlier stage in the proposal. I think we would.
Sort out the electrics are going to go where the gas is going to go, etc.
So pre-commencement conditions have to be agreed by the applicant. So if we were going to make it as a pre-commencement condition, we would need to go back and ask the applicant to agree it. But they also have to be, there's been, I suppose, a big pushback to planners about the sort of rather ad lib use of pre-commencement conditions that used to happen. There has to be a justification as to why it has to be before anything else starts. Why do you have to have this? So normally pre-commencement would be things like a construction management plan or arboricultural, tree protection, things that need to be agreed at the very outset because it's too late afterwards. And I think in this one, I think having a trigger such as prior to installation of the mezzanine floor means that it's thought about early before they've started plastering walls, putting the electrics in early enough, but not a pre-commencement that could be, if challenged, deemed to be unreasonable. I think most planning inspectors now would not put a condition like this as a pre-commencement condition.
Even if it is protecting the conservation area, which is the thing that basically we're talking about in the area, not just the building, but the conservation area, because that is important. I'm not going to argue with you, and that's fine, as long as you're very comfortable, as Mike has pointed out, because that is the thing that is important in that area.
I'm confident that with that triggers, I think what we probably should be saying is prior to installation or prior to the first construction of the mezzanine floor, whichever is the sooner, because in the event that they decide to start doing works on the outside before they start doing works on the inside.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Howe, for raising that one. Councillor Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I think it's a win-win situation. We could do the rooms for people to live, and we could certainly do in most of East Devon some form of food bank or whatever they want to call it. So considering that the food bank can go back in, and we'll have 3 to 6 residents living in there, I think it's a good idea and all in favour, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, before Councillor Faithful puts his hand up, I'll just remind you it's a community larder, not a food bank. Councillor Maddie Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Can I have clarity from someone? Who is going to maintain the car park and the perimeter walls and grounds? Is it going to be the owner of the flats, or is it going to be community, EDDC, or the town council, or who's going to maintain it before they start having a row about it?
So at the moment, those are maintained by the freeholder of the building, who is the applicant. It's likely that he would maintain a freehold interest, and the apartments would be sold on a leasehold basis. So if it's not that freeholder, it would be a different freeholder.
That would be a management company then?
So it wouldn't necessarily be a management company. It could be a person in their own right. It doesn't necessarily have to be a management company.
Okay. Right. Any more members wishing to speak? Or if not, we can. I think we have a proposal, actually, don't we? Did we?
I made one, but I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
Chair, no, all it was just to add is that it wasn't on the actual agenda, but Jill just confirmed that we need to adopt the appropriate assessment first. So if we can just do a vote on that, and then we can move to the proposal put forward by Councillor Bowler. Thank you.
Yeah, that's because of its proximity to the.
Well, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So we have an appropriate assessment on this one. So we'll take a vote on that first. So all in favour of adopting that?
Unanimous?
Yep.
Can I ask you proposed and seconded that, or was that done from the chair?
Thank you, Mike. That was done from the chair. He does occasionally have a bit of
I
power.
just asked him to take it on board, and he said he would.
Okay. Oh no, we don't combine votes. So moving on, can I just have a reminder of who proposed and seconded that?
I propose it, Chair, just to confirm I did propose it with the thing on, and I think also what we talked about there, what we've just agreed with the extra thing that
With the
Mike has put in
amended
there.
condition 4.
Condition, and also the forced parking spaces to be allocated to the community hall. Otherwise, that always causes problems later on.
Okay, can we add that as a condition, Jill? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, and that was seconded by councillor Haggerty. Okay, all in favour then?
Sorry, did you want to, do you want to try doing, so we have the view of the
Ooh,
view?
yes.
So you need to turn your microphone off. So, in favour?
Then you need to turn your mic off.
Oh, God.
And against?
So that's carried.
Okay, thank you. So the reason for that was, as councillor Barlow has pointed out, when we come to take a vote, it's not clear to anyone viewing this online who voted which way. We could always ask for a recorded vote if we were particularly concerned, but in that instance, it gives a little bit more clarity to members of the public. So we just have to make sure all microphones are switched off and that we've got the general view. Okay, so we will move on to agenda item 9, which is 87 Sidford High Street, Sidford, pages 16 to 83 in your agenda pack, and it's Jill again to present this one.
Sorry, could we just have 2 minutes?
Oh, just got to have 2 minutes. Have a stand up, turn around, sit down again. We've just got a 2-minute hiatus while we get some more information. Sorry, I've got a misprint on my script. It was 46 to 83. I thought something didn't sound right because I thought, wasn't the last one 38? Okay, 46. Okay, we're good to go. Apparently our housing land supply is just, no.
Okay, apologies for that delay there. So this application is 87 Sidford High Street, Sidford. So this application is before committee as the officer recommendation of approval is contrary to the recommendations of the Town Council and the Ward Councillor. So this site is on the western edge of Sidford. It's this house here, number 87, Sidford High Street. So the application seeks approval for the demolition of the existing house and the construction of 4 houses on the site. So there is an extensive planning history for the site as detailed in the committee report. So this application is the same as the earlier 2653 application for the site, which was refused on grounds of insufficient ecological information. And the application also went to appeal and was also dismissed on the same grounds. But it's notable that the inspector found the scheme acceptable in all other regards, and there have been no material change in circumstances since then, with the exception of our changes to our housing land supply, and our emerging local plan is now further advanced. So this revised application seeks to overcome the previous ecological objections to the scheme. So in terms of the site context, the application site is this site in the middle here. So on the east of the site, this is Bramble Close. So we've got bungalows to the east. To the south, this road is Coombe Hayes, and again, we've got bungalows to the south of the site. And on the west of the site, along Sidford High Street, there's some relatively tall 2- and 3-storey houses along here. So that's the existing house. It's set back from the road by about 20 metres. This is number 87A that you can see just to the west of the image. So this is the highest point of the site, and then it slopes down towards the southeast of the site. And the house is currently not occupied, and the rest of the site has become significantly overgrown in the last few years as a result of nobody living in the dwelling. So that's an image from the rear of the dwelling looking back up to the site. So there's a number of notable trees on the application site, some of which are protected by tree preservation orders. So there's a weeping willow here, there's an ash just to the right of the image. There's a cedar and an oak on the junction with High Street here. And then there's a row of Monterey pines along the western boundary of the site. So all of these trees are being retained within the scheme, and there's no objections to the proposals from East Devon's tree officer. So this is a view from the south of the site, from Coombe Hayes looking north up to the application site. So you can just see the roof of the existing dwelling on my pointer there. So the existing ridge of that house is 89.24 metres above ordnance datum. So the proposed house is just under a metre taller than that. But it's notable that this is the same height as a house that was approved under an earlier 2018 application. So that's the existing site plan. This is orientated in a different direction, unfortunately. So this is Sidford High Street down here, and the existing house at the higher level, and then the land falls away to the south. So in terms of the proposed application site, so we've got 2 larger dwellings at the top end of the site, on the site of the existing house, and then there's 2 smaller dwellings proposed at the lower end of the site, which reflect the scale of the surrounding dwellings at the south end of the site. So the site is in the built-up area boundary, and given the lack of 5-year housing land supply, the tilted balance therefore applies. The site is very spacious. It's 0.37 hectares. So within this location, back garden development wouldn't normally be acceptable, but given the spacious character of the site, the density of the dwellings and their gardens would reflect the surrounding character of the area, and is considered acceptable. And this is also backed up by the previous appeal history for the site, where the inspector also said that the density was acceptable. So we've got a long section through the site here. So this is Sidford High Street up here. The larger dwellings at the top. So these are 3.5 storey, but in effect only 2.5 stories would face the road, with the lower ground floor story effectively being built into the slope on the site. And then we've got a smaller 2-storey dwelling, and then at the very bottom of the site, a bungalow. So the houses step down to reflect the surrounding development around the site. So this is a long section looking north. So this is looking at the back of the proposed dwellings and the back of the existing houses along Sidford High Street. So the red dotted outline refers to a housing scheme approved in 2018. So the height of these proposed houses is commensurate with the surrounding development. What this section doesn't show is that further east, the development drops down and there's bungalows here. So it hasn't shown those. However, if we look at the street scene, there's a significant distance between the existing bungalow and the proposed dwelling. There's 17 metres between adjacent gable elevations. There's significant hedge and trees between the dwellings, and neither of the dwellings have any windows in their gable elevations. So it's not considered that there would be any overlooking impacts, and the distance and the trees means that it's considered that there wouldn't be any adverse impacts to any residential amenity as a result of the proposal. And although the proposed dwellings are taller than the bungalows, further along Sidford Road, the development steps up again to 2- and 3-storey dwellings. So the height of the proposal isn't considered to be out of context in terms of the wider context along Sidford High Street. So looking at the dwellings, these are the 3.5-storey dwellings on the top of the site. So there is a balcony at first floor level, but this is really just to access the garden. It's not wide enough to use to sit out on. There's no gable windows, therefore we don't feel that this would reduce in any would result in any overlooking, given the distance from the boundaries of the site. And there's the upper stories and the roof plan. So in terms of the elevations, the materials proposed are render, timber cladding. We've got good quality aluminium powder coated windows and doors, and further information would be required by way of condition if the application was approved, so that we could ensure the quality of the development. And again, there's the section showing the change in level between the front and the rear of those dwellings. So there's no windows to the side elevation, so there's no potential of any overlooking. And then looking at the smaller houses, this is the bungalow at the rear of the site. So all of the proposed dwellings comply with the nationally described minimum space standards. In terms of the elevations, it's relatively bland, proposed in timber cladding, but this does reflect some of the newer buildings seen around the site. And also it's notable that this was considered acceptable during the previous appeal for the site by the planning inspector. And here's our second 2-storey smaller house at the rear of the site. So, and all of these dwellings have got good separation distances of between 24 and 25 metres between adjacent dwellings. So they would all have a good level of privacy between the dwellings. And again, the elevations, so relatively simple rendered elevations and good quality windows and doors. So the ecology was the previous issue with the last application. The site is very overgrown, and the applicant has provided extensive ecological surveys in support of the application. So the house is a day roost for common pipistrelle bats and low numbers of brown long-eared bats, so a protected species licence would be required. An alternative roosting provision has been made in the roof of the bungalow. The site also supports very small numbers of dormice, so these would be retained on the site, and any vegetation would have to be undertaken, clearance of vegetation would have to be undertaken with an ecologist on site to supervise, and they would also need a European Protected Species licence in respect of dormice. The site also supports an exceptional population of slow worms, so these would not be able to be retained on site. They would have to be relocated to a suitable site. So, so to this end, the East Evans ecologist has supported the scheme, but with a number of conditions to ensure that adequate mitigation for the bats, dormice, slow worms is ensured. So a number of these are pre-commencement conditions, so that details of where the slow worms would be relocated to can all be established prior to any work starting on site. And there would also be a condition in respect of lighting. In terms of the trees, the application has included an arboricultural method statement and a tree protection plan, which would be conditioned as part of any proposal. All significant and TPO trees would be retained in the scheme. There is a new driveway proposed, and no dig surfaces would be used for these to ensure there's no damage within the root protection areas of these trees along Sidford High Street. And there'd also be new hedge and tree planting proposed around the site and between plots to form the plot boundaries, and that would also assist with dormice moving around the site to provide linkages on the site and also linkages to the rest of the site as a whole. In terms of highways, this is a view of the front of the site looking west along Sidford High Street. So the site is here, and this is the hedge. That's one of the TPO trees at the end of the site. Highways have no objection to the new driveway proposed, and the existing driveway has sufficient visibility. They've commented that the proposal would not create an unacceptable trip generation impact upon the local highway network. They have requested that the footway is widened to create a minimum of 1.5 footway width along this section of Sidford High Street. However, this would need to be balanced against the loss of this hedgerow and the impact of these TPO trees at the end of the site. Therefore, we would consider that the localised widening, which would only impact this short stretch in front of the site, the harm would not be, the kind of localised benefits would not be outweighed by the harm caused to that hedgerow and to the existing trees. It's also noted that Highways considered the previous application acceptable without requiring the footway widening. Highways have requested that a construction and environmental management plan be required to mitigate the impacts of the construction upon the local highway network. And then in conclusion, the application would provide much needed housing at a density that would be appropriate to the surrounding context. The scheme would result in landscaping enhancements to the existing hedgerows on 3 sides and additional tree planting along the western boundary. The heights of the proposed dwellings are similar to those previously approved, and the previous ecological objection has been overcome by further survey work. And therefore we would recommend that the appropriate assessment be adopted and that the application be approved subject to conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have questions. Councillor Faithful, did you put your hand?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I beat Ian on that one, didn't I? You talk about the overgrown nature of the site, are you suggesting that if we just let the brambles take over, then it's welcome to get planning permission? Because to me, that shouldn't be a reason to give planning permission just because it's got been neglected and got overgrown.
I don't think we are saying that's a reason to give planning permission. The provision of housing is the reason to give planning approval.
I think, Peter, that was one of the concerns, actually, that the amount of overgrowing has actually led to an increase in biodiversity there, and that therefore we need to have particular regard to that. Councillor Barlow.
Yeah, on that point.
I'm sorry, Councillor Anne Hall. Done it again, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Question about trees. Plot 1 has that lovely golden weeping willow in it. How far away will that be from the actual property which is being built? Because they're renowned for being problematical with drains, and the recommended is 30 metres away from a property to be built. Are we actually going to suggest we actually possibly cause a problem by actually leaving that tree? I love trees, and is there a way we could do some get them to make it smaller so the root growth doesn't go searching for water and drainage? But it is an issue. Thank you.
So I'm not able to scale off this drawing, so I can't tell you how close it is. I could come back with a dimension, having looked at the drawings. There is a tree protection plan in place, which would cover things like drainage. I mean, obviously we can't. It's got a tree protection order, so its preservation is considered important. In terms of overshadowing, the applicant has provided a document to show that there won't be any overshadowing. In terms of the space of the garden that isn't covered by that tree, it's considered that there's kind of ample usable garden that doesn't have the weeping willow on it.
I would like to have clarification, because also subsidence can be caused by a weeping willow quite happily, quite easily, quite quickly, and it's just a concern for the new buildings. Thank you.
If I could, Chair, just come back. So the Council Arboriculturalist has reviewed the plans and has raised no objections. So we have to, I mean, he will have understood that it's a protected tree and the species, and has raised no objection. It wasn't a reason for refusal in the previous scheme, and the planning inspector, when considered that the relationship was acceptable. So I would be concerned about introducing that as a reason for refusing at this stage.
Thank you for that, but I was just trying to get the betterment of the plan, which may actually have problems later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ian Barlow.
No, thank you, Chair. They've been answered.
Okay. Sorry, you caught me out there, Ian. I was about to sit back and...
Always full of surprises, Chair.
You are indeed. Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Possibly a slightly cheeky question, but bearing in mind a couple of times this morning it's been raised about making sure that this committee takes on board the comments of the statutory consultees. Highways have, shall I put it, suggested about the widening of this pavement, which I presume is for highway safety, and planners have said, no, thank you. Did planners go back to highways for clarification whether their suggestion is for highway safety? Was there communication about perhaps other alternatives, or are we just in a position as a committee where one statutory consultee is saying something and our officers are saying something else?
I think in this instance, so the Highway Authority is not objecting to this proposal, and I think that's very important to make clear. They made a suggestion that it would be desirable to widen the footpath. The officer view was, and it was to, the implication in the comment was that it was to improve pedestrian safety walking towards the the town and facilities. But having regard to the extended length of the pavement, so it would be widened for a short period, and the creation of the access way in itself will create a widening point. So if two people were perhaps coming towards each other and both had, buggies and children, whatever, there would be a refuge effectively where they could pass each other. But then they're back on this, it is a narrow footpath, and I think that's the issue. The highways thought it might be an opportunity to try and make an improvement, but it would only be for such a short piece of highway that the officer view was that when you balance that up to the consequential impact on the character of the area by taking out a hedgerow and potential impacts on a tree, that the benefits would be minimal. Because for the rest of the journey, you're back onto a narrow pavement. So because highways hadn't objected on those grounds, we took the view, putting it in the planning balance, that particular suggestion was not of sufficient benefit weighed with the other planning harms.
Perhaps highways could do the unthinkable and take a bit of road space instead. Rather than destroy a hedgerow. Peter, did you want to come back?
But just going back to that pavement, how do we know where the true width of the pavement is? Because that looks to me like a typical being neglected by, it's not been cleaned back for years, and it probably find the pavement is possibly twice the width that you can see. It's just been leaves and everything rotted down and grown grass all over it. So I think they probably would have done themselves a favour if they'd actually took the trouble to clean the pavement in front of their property.
Well, that's one for highways, isn't it? They could come along and do some work on that. Ian,
Highways are very busy, obviously, and have no money, so I'll get the Sidmouth Town Council to go up and have a look and see if they can widen it for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The board member, of course, is the member for highways, so there might be some chance of getting something done there. Okay, that's at county, of course. Any more questions, or shall we go into debate? Okay, into debate. Oh, come on, somebody get in before Ian. Sorry, Steve, not quite quick enough. Go on, Ian.
I'm very happy to.
Okay, go on, Steve.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Chair. I think this is a good use of a redundant property, Chair, and I think it's already everything's been said, so I'm quite happy to propose approval. But I can't see anything in the paperwork. It goes on about biodiversity and all the different animals that are there. It doesn't say anything about putting bird bricks in the buildings. Is that any reason why that's not in there, please? But overall, I'm happy to propose acceptance.
Okay. Jill, could you comment on that? Was there also a bat loft proposed somewhere?
So there is a bat loft proposed. I'm afraid I can't remember whether there were bee bricks. So the application was received prior to the changes in biodiversity net gain, so there is no requirement for the application to actually comply with. So we have as well as the bat loft, we have bat and bird boxes, integrated bee blocks, hedgehog highways, and enhanced hedgerow planting. So that is all set out in the ecological impact assessment and has been added as a condition. But in terms of biodiversity net gain, the application was received before the change in the legislation, so there's no requirement for the application to achieve a 10% uplift across the site.
Apologies, I missed that.
Okay, thank you. I think it probably just refers to an ecology report, which probably covered that. Okay, Councillor Anne Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to second it, as it looks a well-developed plan of the buildings and development. I was just looking through the conditions and I can't see that there's no burning to be on site, but because it's close to the high street, I think we shouldn't allow burning on site as a condition. I may have missed it, but I've looked.
Yes, I can't. Yeah, it'd be in the condition 9, isn't it? The Kemp. No, that's interesting. We had one recently where burning came in twice, so we decided one was redundant.
We can add that in if it's not
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah.
Into the CMP or the Kemp.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Condition 10, I see the ecological impact assessment report. It does mention the bat loft, bat and bird boxes, integrated bee bricks, hedgehog highways and enhanced hedgerow planting. So that's all good. Okay, Councillor Barlow again.
Thank you, Chair. With the members' agreement who have proposed this, I just wanted to say, last time when we were talking about houses, we started talking about water butts and preventing flooding issues as much as we can. And there's nothing in here. And we also talked about what size they should be, and it got a bit complicated. Your average, because I was rung afterwards to try and clarify this, but your average water butt is 200 litres, I think, for the average one you buy in your garden. So, and I wonder if we could say that 200 litres for every bedroom supplied. So a 5-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house should have 4 of them, and which is obviously larger. And I think that would be reasonable and easy for us to check that they are there then. And also, there's no solar panel showing on this. And I just wonder, again, this is mainly south-facing. These are good roofs, and I think any roof that is available should have them on it, if it is possible. It's cheap to put them on. It makes us help our carbon targets that we're supposed to be hitting as a district. And again, when you're building these things, it is cheaper to do it than to provide it afterwards. I know it's not on the plan, but I just think that we should be making that attempt, especially as we are doing this outside the normal local plan. And also, obviously, with the slow worms, they are being moved, but there is a big talk as to whether you can move successfully slow worms. I don't want to get into that now. Our ecology expert has said we can, but when you look online and you talk to the experts, there is many questions as to whether it can be done. However, we are where we are, so I'm quite happy with that we go with our expert, as we are told. We shouldn't argue with our experts. So I'm very happy to say, as long as we could have the water butts and the solar panels put on there as well. And I just wanted to point out, obviously, the houses because this is close to my ward and I know it's important, Bramble Close are all bungalows. We have a choice. We can either go up and build higher, or we can spread out more. So, I think that this is a case where you wouldn't allow bungalows in this day and age because they take up too much floor space. So to me, this is a sensible thing. It suits the buildings on the front on Sidford High Street. And there is a bungalow at the back, which helps on the overlooking or the overbearing issues down the bottom there. So I'm very happy to vote with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go back to Jill because I'm not sure that we can just condition those. So there might be a bit of negotiation required there.
I mean, in terms of the solar panels, we can only assess the application.
Sorry, Jill. So I know we've had this issue before. Our current local plan has no policy specifically requiring solar panels. We do have strategy 38, which talks about sustainable design and construction. And I think we could apply add a condition asking for effectively a sustainability statement to be submitted, demonstrating how they will achieve demonstrate sustainable design and construction through, so effectively referencing back to strategy 38, asking them to give details of how they will secure sustainable design construction through use of renewable energy, technology, landform, layout, building orientation, massing, etc. And therefore it could be an option. But we have not, up until now, unless it's been specifically indicated or proposed on a scheme, conditioned the use of solar panels where they have, as I say, where they haven't actually already been a proposal as part of meeting that. So that's what I would suggest. And within that, we could also tie in the use of water butts, because that is part B of that policy, is how the development will be resilient to the impacts of climate change.
Can we not make it a condition because of the flooding issues in the area? There are flooding issues in the area. It's one of the things that was put forward as a reason. I know the appeal, but also the biodiversity. This is not in the local opinion. In 2022, this was turned down on appeal on the basis of this. We're saying now that because of the housing land supply, we're basically moving what we said wasn't acceptable 2 years ago to this. So therefore, the conditions that we put on this is that we want solar panels and we want the water butts to help the situation in the area. I'm just asking, why can't we?
I think, I mean, we have recently been applying conditions on the provision of water butts. Water butts, I don't see as a particularly onerous thing for a developer to provide. Solar panels are sometimes the best solution, but not always the best solution for in terms of sustainability, because it does depend on shading. There's a lot of trees on the site. I think you need to look at the specifics. I would suggest a condition that perhaps allows us to assess whether solar panels are a good solution or whether there's other measures, rather than saying that they should definitely be providing the solar panels. That would be my advice, but obviously it's for members to decide. If that's what you decide is necessary for you to be able to support the scheme, then that is something you could impose. I'm just giving you my view on it.
I think last time it was in addition. I think, again, I don't care if they're not the best way to do it, but you're adding something that is giving an additional benefit to those houses and to our carbon, and to the country's carbon saving.
Okay. Councillor Wragg.
Thank you. Regarding water butts, presumably that would be for the purpose of watering gardens. No? Can you clarify? Through you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, it's basically the smart water butts. So basically they fill up when there is a heavy rain and then they will leak out. But the idea is to take some of the water that's going in, supposedly in soakways, etc. So it helps with the flooding. But then you can also, of course, water your garden with them as well, sometimes.
I noticed surface water drainage is going to be dealt with by soakaways. No, well, they have asked for a 10% uplift in the calculations to take account. It's condition 15. The slow worms will have gone by then. Well, hopefully they'll have come back. I found one yesterday on my allotment. I'm pleased to say, a beautiful one.
Just on that point, Chair, just to point out, this is an exceptional site for slow worms. That meant they found 20 slow worms in a 1 hour period of checking. So it's an exceptional site for slow worms. That's what they said in the report. And I actually spoke to the officer yesterday to find out what it was and learn all about the frog life grading system, which is fascinating.
We'll look forward to it another time, Ian, perhaps, Ian. Okay, Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support this project, can I propose that, excuse me, can I propose to adopt the assessment? Please?
You can propose we adopt the appropriate assessment. Mike, did you want to come in?
There's virtually no reason to refuse this anyway, so I'm just nervous about our ecological assessment here. With regard to the slow worms that keep getting pointed out. In it, we're saying it's going to be translocated, fine, but where to? Could be Timbuktu as far as we're concerned. I believe it should be a near receptor location, ideally in East Devon. It just seems open-ended. You can put them in the post, you can stick them wherever you want to. I think that's wrong. I think we should be slightly more in depth and say, you know, close to home, if that makes any sense to anybody.
We ask for the results of reptile translocation. We don't ask for the method in advance. But in condition 10, could we add that in, Jill? Presumably there has been an ecological impact assessment report, and that has detailed various measures. I would hope.
Yeah, I think that where the slow worms are relocated to, so there is the construction and ecological management plan will detail the timings and where that receptor site is, but that will also have to be agreed with Natural England as part of the licence for removing those. So I would have to take advice from our ecologist on whether we can insist that that's in Devon. Presumably it will be, but I couldn't say with 100% certainty. No, I do understand where you're coming from.
Okay. Yeah, condition 9, the construction and ecological management plan is required. And that will, the 9 and 10 actually both cover ecology. And they even talk about having an ecological clerk of works on site to oversee certain things and may be required for some of the license requirements.
Slow worms aren't a European protected species. They're just covered by our own UK things, whereas the dormice, which we're not actually moving, so that's what they don't have quite as much protection as dormice, because no one likes them as much because they're not fluffy.
Okay, but I think they're still protected, aren't they? You can't harm them. Okay, I think we've put that one through the ringer. Maddie, Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you. It says here that there's 3 large Monterey pines, and it's noted that they have a limited, safe, useful life expectancy. The only reason they worry me is we've had quite a few instances in my ward because these trees rot from the inside out. So I don't understand why they're retaining them when they know they're going to be down before the next 10 years are up, and they are very, very large trees. Why they are keeping them and not replanting. Can anyone give me any idea why, if the tree officers are a bit dubious about them?
I think because they are covered by a tree preservation order, the instinct would be to retain them on site as long as possible and obviously monitor them to ensure that they are safe, and that prior to a point when they're not safe anymore, that they are then removed and replaced with something else instead.
Okay, from the tree officers I spoke to in my ward, they say it's very hard to tell. It isn't until branches from higher up the tree start falling, that they realise that the tree is actually dying because they die from the inside out. And so I'm not sure whether our guys, I know they got TPO on them, this is why we had trouble getting one down, because our officers didn't want to take it down. But we had to in the end because large branches were falling off. So I'm a bit concerned about these 3 trees. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is totally aware that, you know, the tree officer has said they're not terribly good.
Well, perhaps we shouldn't compare one tree with another. It does say in the report that they have a limited life expectancy, but that's no reason for preemptively felling them, just in case they fail sometime in the next 10 years. They could take considerably longer than that before they actually become a danger. I think that'll be down to the applicant to make sure that they are monitoring these trees and are aware of them. And being covered by a TPO, it will ensure that they can't just do something to them without checking first with us. Councillor Ann Hall.
Just hope that the tree officers can do a sonic survey to see what's going on within the actual trunk of large trees. So if that is an issue, a sonic survey would be preferable before making sure that they are safe for the foreseeable. But what they say in the near future could be 50 years anyway of a lifetime of a tree. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we've gone around that one. So the first thing we need to do is Del, you proposed the appropriate assessment. We didn't have a seconder, so Councillor Wragg has seconded. So all those in favour of adopting the appropriate assessment? That's unanimous. We don't need to go full screen for that one. Okay, and we have a proposer. Ian, was it?
No, Steve.
No? Councillor Gazzard and seconded by Councillor
Can I just check, Chair? There was some other conditions. So can I just check the extra conditions that we're going to put on, please?
Yeah, I think there's been some confusion about that. So can we just check what conditions we've got there, Jill?
So we were going to add a no burning condition to the construction environment management plan. We were going to add a condition requesting a sustainability statement incorporating water butts and possibly solar panels, referencing back to strategy 38. And we were also going to add a section in respect of the slow worm resiting to ensure that the receptor site is as close as reasonably possible to the existing site.
You happy with that, Chair?
Well, I am. I'm members. Okay. Very well. So it's been proposed and seconded. So all those in favour? Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that concludes this morning. Gosh, you finished before 1 o'clock. Very good. The applications below will not be considered before 1:30, but that would give us 40 minutes for lunch. So if everybody's happy, we'll come back at 1:30. Yep. Okay, doke. In that case, see you at 1:30.